There's so many of these ideas. I'd love to cover them all. I've got a new 6-year presidential term with a 5th-year extension referendum for 2 additional years, which is optional. The president doesn't have to go for it. And it's a referendum election. It's like these judicial elections in many states where you don't have people running against one another for judge. Some states do, Texas, which is terrible. It's an awful perversion of the judicial system. But it's just a yes or no, up or thumbs up, thumbs down referendum on the incumbent. And either the incumbent gets the additional time or not. And the whole idea of this is to reduce negative campaigning, because our presidential elections for re-election are about the incumbent anyway. If you like the incumbent, if the majority likes the incumbent's going to get another 4-year term. If people don't like the incumbent, then the alternative probably will be installed under most circumstances. So it would reduce some of the negative campaigning, and it would make the campaigning more issue-oriented about what the president had done or not done, whether he or she had been good for the country or not. War-making powers, those of you who are pleased about the Iraq War won't like this one. I'm with the 2/3 majority who thinks it was an unnecessary war and would like to see a way to build in more congressional power on war making, which after all was the intention of the founders. Why else would they have made the president commander-in-chief and given the power to declare war to Congress? They wanted divided war powers. They wanted both branches to come together on the most critical decision that can be made in any democracy, to send young people off to war, potentially to die. It shouldn't be up to just one branch. It's not completely up to the presidency, but it almost is. The powers have become so unfettered in the war-making area that I think presidents have far too much authority. So I'm proposing that while a president, under the War Powers Act, which would be incorporated into the Constitution, could commit troops for up to a year, at the end of that year, Congress would have to vote on extending troop involvement, and if a majority of both houses, with limited debate built into the Constitution, did not agree that the involvement should continue, then all troops would have to be withdrawn within a year. That still gives a lot of flexibility to a president, a year opening up, a year in conclusion, but I think it's better than, I don't know, maybe a really unpopular, unnecessary war that's gone on for 5 years. What could I be referring to? We need some change. And look, don't think it's partisan. What about Harry Truman in Korea? What a disaster. What about Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam? What a disaster. How many of these examples do we need before we recognize that we need a rebalancing of constitutional war powers? That's my point. And I want to get rid of the natural born citizen requirement for the presidency, substituting 25, 30 years of citizenship. Come on. 14 million Americans excluded from even dreaming about running for president. And this affects senior people on both sides of the aisle. That's not American. And there really isn't any justification for it to begin with. The founders, it was just thrown into a committee report and it ended up in the Constitution. No one really understands why it's there. We can't even change something as simple as that, and it bothers me. I'll mention a couple of others in politics and then go to questions. It's in the political system that I think we really need some change, and I want to see a politics article. Unlike most of the constitutions around the world, we have no politics article because we had, as I mentioned, no mass democracy, no political parties in the beginning. Well, it's time. Even Mr. Jefferson recognized that he was wrong when he originally opposed political parties. Most of the founders were wrong in considering them factions. Eventually they understood that a society like the United States could not be run, a democracy could not be run without political parties. I have a slogan, politics is a good thing, which I stole from Clifton McCleskey with his permission. And that comes from the love of parties and the love of political activity. Politics is a good thing. I have this on stickers and on t-shirts. I give it to students. They are just outraged. They all think politics is corrupt and nasty and violent, and there are parts of it that are. So I always remind people, politics is our substitution for coup d'etats and riots in the street. It is the rough, cutting edge of democracy. It is not supposed to be a Sunday afternoon tea party, which too many good government groups, too many goo-goos think it should be. It's not supposed to be polite all the time. It doesn't have to be ugly, but it shouldn't be polite all the time either. Well, what should we do in the political system? We've just been through almost this nominating process. I cannot believe how long it is. And you laugh. It's ruined my life. I thought it was going to be over in mid-February. I've postponed everything. I haven't done anything for months. Don't tell anybody at the university. But all I've done is this darn campaign. We'll finally finish it up Tuesday, the final 2 primaries after Puerto Rico Sunday and then Montana and South Dakota. And one good thing about this year on the Democratic side is that you have had a real choice in all 50 states. Everybody's gotten to vote for once. It's not over after New Hampshire and Iowa. But let's remember that usually it is over after New Hampshire, Iowa, and a couple of other states. South Carolina, now they've thrown Nevada in. Maybe you get to a Super Tuesday of some sort. But on the whole, you have a handful of states, the same states, every 4 years, winnowing the field, determining the choices for everyone else. That's not a good thing. It's better to have a system where everyone does get to vote, but in a more rational way, and a way that doesn't eat up the holidays, for goodness sakes. Can you believe this campaign where we started voting 3 days after January 1st? They took 2 hours off on Christmas. That was it. This is not good for the system. It affected the system and distorted the choices in lots of ways. So I propose a regional lottery system. You divide the United States into 4, the quadrants draw themselves, it's very easy to do, and you move the campaign back to April. You don't have to start it in January. Do we really have to eat up 2 full years of every president's term, a year campaigning, and then a year of primaries and caucuses, and a general election campaign? Let's shorten this thing. We can't do it like a parliamentary system in 4 or 5 weeks, but we can certainly shorten the system, shorten the length of the contest. So I propose starting it in April, but what would keep candidates from campaigning starting the day after the last election? Well, you can't stop them in some ways. They could be raising money, and they could be giving speeches, and they could be going on and talking to Wolf Blitzer endlessly. That's fine. You know, you can do that. But here's what we could do to limit the campaign. If they don't know where the campaign will start, then they will be unable to do many of the activities that cause campaigning to be so intense for so long prior to every presidential election day. So on January 1st of the actual election year, you have a lottery, you know, right in the halftime of the Rose Bowl. And the chairperson of the Federal Election Commission comes on television and picks out the order of the ping pong balls, each ping pong ball having a region's name on it. And the first region goes in April, and the second region goes in May, and the third region in June, and the fourth region in July, and the 2 national conventions in August. And we can actually scope the whole campaign into about 6.5 months. Wouldn't that be wonderful for a change? Clifton likes that one. I appreciate that. You didn't tell me that before. There are some people considering this plan now. We'll see. It has a good chance of getting enacted about the year I die. But looking forward to it, and I hope